Thank you, Chris. It's actually a major disadvantage to speak of Patrick, who is such a master of this form. But in many ways, it's also natural to follow because, after all, Japan is the country that led growth in East Asia. At the same time, there are major similarities between the two countries in the sense of, the Asian preoccupation with tests and all that. Yet, at the same time, though, China has undergone very significant transformations in the last 30 years. There are massive changes in education, in science and technology, and of course, all those are being reflected in certain indices, which I'm going to come to. At the same time, there are very interesting developments. Now, I'm presenting a graph here, basically showing the number of college graduates each year, and you can see around the beginning of the 2000s, there was a major spike. In the context of the Asian financial crisis, China dramatically increased college intake, and we are beginning to cope with the results at this moment. At the same time, over the last decade, investments by the Chinese government in science and technology is actually compounding, is becoming a much greater percentage of GDP. It's still relatively low compared to the West, but nonetheless, those numbers are going up very dramatically. At the same time, you can look at the numbers of citations and patents. I'm only showing the citations. China's is still small as a proportion of the total, yet between the year 2000 and the year 2005 or so, China's share actually more than doubled. It's a very significant development in that regard. Of course, you can talk about issues of quality and quantity, but you cannot have quantity without quality. Same time, however, the dramatic expansion of the colleges actually to sort of have degraded the value of each degree. In fact, to sort of in many ways, college students find it much harder to get jobs. At the same time, there are continuing sort of issues related to politics and so on. So all those are coming together. We have this vast market, vast changes, and there are growing interest by foreign institutions to engage, to invest, to collaborate. So those present both opportunities and challenges in China. Most universities from the West actually are having some sort of low-intensity engagement in China by sending students study abroad programs. They're not even formally registered in China today. Some actually sort of have operated under the radar screen for over 2 decades, in fact. At the same time, there are universities you hear that are having full-fledged campuses. But usually, though, Chinese regulation requires foreign universities to partner with a Chinese institution. In certain cases, they partner with a fake partner. University of Nottingham is one of those. Recently, however, there are a group of colleges that have gone into China, Liverpool, Duke, and so on, that are more substantive. New models, however, are beginning to emerge. Those are the ones that do not offer degrees in China, but offers a broad range of programming, including the University of Chicago, Columbia, and Harvard. Harvard primarily is based in Shanghai, primarily for the business school. Chicago, however, is much more broadly oriented. We engage in very different areas. We are located right in the university district. Now, here is the number. In Beijing alone, there are 750,000 college students. And that indicates the kind of potential there is to do all sorts of things, from universities to in fact, the Chinese Academy of Sciences and other institutes. So here is the view of what you can see from our offices in Beijing on the 20th floor. In fact, I leave it to you to comment on the Beijing landscape. But what's interesting, however, is the potential in terms of this. And of course, we go to Beijing. We have a set of facilities to allow us, whether our students go into Beijing to take classes, or for that matter, to have conferences, to have all sorts of collaborations. For example, we have a base where our researchers can conduct experiments or go out, and of course, you cannot go there without some symbol of collaboration between China and the US. This is actually a replica of a Raptor-X that was stolen out of China through a University of Chicago professor. We are returning the original to China after study. And this is a wonderful symbol of the kind of collaboration and the kind of range of things. We start, for example, in areas ranging from condensed matter physics to family and labor economics to the arts, and so on. And at the same time, we have a range of initiatives. For example, recently we have been doing programs on property rights and China's development. We have been doing programming in terms of summer institutes, thinking about law and economics, of family and labor economics, and of course political sociology. Here is one of our more distinguished alumni, Dali Yang, one of the first Chinese ever to win the Nobel Prize. Of course, he makes this nostalgic return to Chicago in Beijing, however. Another symbol is our arts program there. We actually showcase some of the best works of art that are being produced in China through, we actually have a faculty member who can curate within China, so those are rotating exhibitions. It's not a lot of space, but it does allow us to engage across the disciplines in a way that allow us to really, for the university, to link up with Chinese institutions across very broad areas, so that actually we are not pigeonholed into one particular thing, one particular area, but instead allow us the kind of flexibility to engage with Chinese partners, whether it's industrial co-development or China's governance. It's really interesting. There are a lot of possibilities in this regard, because every time we do so, we treat our Chinese counterparts as equals. And of course, as a result, new opportunities just come to us because we are there. It's not possible in the past. So they don't come to Chicago, even though we are in the networked age, we have the internet, and yet they don't come to us. Instead, now that we are there, they do come to us, whether it's in history or in other areas, in fact. Now, one of the most interesting things is the University of Chicago was founded, in fact, by the Rockefellers in the early days. Rockefellers, however, didn't just found an institution in Chicago, but also institutions in the rest of the United States, and also the Peking Union Medical College, the leading medical school in China. So that also creates opportunities for us in terms of medicine and so on. So we also look at the future. The future is in terms of collaborations between the US and China. We have internships, for example, to bring some of our best science students to top Chinese science labs in the summer. And those are kind of the things you can imagine 20 years down the road. Those are the students who will be the science leaders in their respective areas. As a result, actually, so sort of we would have done something interesting, so sort of to prepare for the further collaboration in the future. So what we have is therefore is a university-wide initiative, multidisciplinary, open to different institutions in China, not pigeonholed into one particular locality. Now, I do want to end with a little graphic about China's demographics. You can see, however, the number of children in China is declining each year. Already, you see that actually the college intake has increased dramatically, but pretty soon, however, there will be a shrinking pool of high school students. Already actually is plateaued and is beginning to decline. What are the implications, not just for China's economic growth, but also for China's education? It raises very interesting questions for us as an international partner, but also for us all in terms of thinking about China's economy and education. Thank you for your attention.
Super job. Dali, thank you. Dali was very kind to adapt to our